Today on Fortnite, I got second place. I was so close.
Mom, will you get me a snack?
Mom! It's time for adult conversation. With me, your host, Brandy Ferner. Hello, Adult Conversation podcast listeners. Today's episode was like a dream come true for me. I got to interview my favorite medium and ask him all the questions I've ever wanted to. We talk about how his gift felt like a curse when he was younger, a dream that changed his path, how he tunes out the sometimes overwhelming spirit world, one way spirit went too far with him, and his answer to my question about contacting dead famous people that I love. He also answers the very light question of what happens when we die, and he has specifics. He shares what happens when he watches Forensic Files, and he divulges his most memorable sittings of the past 23 years. This episode is packed with interesting shit, you guys. Okay, 2 more things. I don't usually give a trigger warning for my episodes, but I just want to let you know that in this episode, we're talking about death, which can include things like murder, suicide, miscarriage, and abortion, among other things. Second is that there's a strange clicking noise every once in a while on Tim's audio track. I did not hear this when we were recording. If I had, I would have asked him what the clicking was or troubleshot with him because I'm usually pretty on it with audio disturbances from my audio or my guest's audio. So I'm not saying the clicking is spirit or something spooky, but I'm also pretty sure it is because it tends to come up when Tim's talking about spirit. I edited out a lot of the clicks that were unnecessary or in parts of the audio where it wasn't needed, but you will hear the lingering ones. On to the show. Today on the podcast, I'm talking with someone I met professionally almost 20 years ago and who continually blows me away with his work as a medium. From the day I met Tim Braun, his gift changed how I saw the world and loved ones who passed away. And he probably doesn't know it, but having a session with him even changed how I set up my wedding. He wrote a book called Life and Death. He lectures, does readings, and reading circles for private clients, including some celebrities, and he's appeared on some TV shows as well. And I believe he also worked with Mother Teresa, and he's seriously the nicest guy I think I've met ever. So welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Thank you, Brandy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Ever since I booked this interview with you, I've been giddy because when I've seen you over the years, we are immediately knee-deep in messages coming through from loved ones. And now I finally get the chance to ask you all the questions, annoying or not, that I have about your gift and your background. So I don't know if you have enough rose water for what you signed up for today.
No, it's fine. Whatever I can do to help you and help your listening audience, I'm more than able and more than willing, and I'm excited as well.
Okay, awesome. So before we get to all the juicy stuff, what is something you think the listeners need to know about you other than the fact that you see dead people or hear them?
I'm just a really practical guy. I'm a skeptic, and a lot of people say, you're a medium and you're a skeptic. And I'm like, absolutely. I'm so skeptical of other mediums. I'm skeptical of other psychics. I'm skeptical of a lot of people unless I've had proof that they are legitimate. So that's on one hand, I'm a skeptical person. But for me, I'm a very transparent person. I love doing my work. I work 4 days a week, do 5 sittings a day, 4 days a week. And I have been doing this now for 20 years. But, getting back to your specific question, what is something about me? I'm just very honest. I'm very direct. I'm born and raised here in Southern California, but when I do my work, some of my clients have asked me, are you from New York? Because you talk like a New Yorker. And I'm like, no, I'm born and raised here in Southern California, but when I do the work, I'm very honest. I always tell my clients, yes, you're the one paying me to do the work, but I don't work for you. I work for whoever's coming through. And so if there's some things that are coming through that are, embarrassing or very, very hurtful, that person's coming through, apologize. I say whatever comes in from spirit. So I never censor anything, and I always give my client exactly what I see, feel, hear, and taste.
Yeah, I remember that because I had a situation where I'm sure you don't remember this because you've sat with so many people, and this was like 20 years ago, but I came to you with my friend Christine, and I was just floored by what I heard, and it was mostly for her. But so then I booked a session alone with you, and coincidentally, my uncle had died a few weeks before I was scheduled to see you, and he was a deacon in the Catholic Church, and he didn't believe in any of this medium stuff, and he had a really funny, sometimes crude sense of humor. And so at his funeral, I went up to the casket and I was like, just so you know, I know you don't believe in all this, but I'm about to go talk to a medium like next week, and his name is Tim. And if you want to talk to me, feel free. I know this isn't your jam, as you do to a body in a casket. But then when I sat with you, like the first thing you said is, I have a male coming in who's saying, I can't believe this shit is real. And I just I knew it was him. It was, and then you matched. I mean, I didn't even give you anything, and you named his wife by first name, who he wanted to apologize to for the way that he exited. And like my mind was blown. So yes, that is an example of how you brought through for me somebody without having any of the sensors on it, and it had to be that way because otherwise I wouldn't have known who it was.
When you mentioned being a deacon in the Catholic Church, I totally get that. Both my mom and dad are both Eucharistic ministers for the Catholic Church. And then my mom even has one step above most people, where she once a week takes the communion box and goes into retirement homes, rest homes, and gives the communion to the sick. She's kind of like the woman priest. So I totally get Catholicism. And, I'm the youngest of 6 kids and a very, very Catholic Taliban family. we call my mom's side of the family and the dad's side the Catholic Taliban, because they're just just so Catholic.
Yeah.
But being the youngest of 6 kids, I have one sister that actually refers clients to me, and then I actually have 3 siblings that are praying for my soul.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So
right.
I totally get that. But for those of your audience members that are Jewish, I always tell my Jewish clients, I'm like, well, you guys invented the guilt. Us Catholics, we just perfected it. Which is totally true. It's just all about guilt.
Right. Religion, the beauty of religion, feeling awful about yourself. Isn't that great?
Right.
No, I know there's more to it than that. But there's so much. First of all, because I want to go back to how you knew you had this gift, which is maybe how I'll start. So when did this gift start happening, and did you accept it? Did you know what it was? I would imagine if you were younger, it would be kind of hard to know what's normal and what's not. Like, when did you first recognize it?
Yeah, so now I would say, it's a gift. But going back as a child, I would have to say it's more of a curse. So it was about 6 years of age, I started seeing, feeling, hearing spirit, but I didn't know that I was actually seeing spirit. And back in Whittier, where I grew up, Whittier, California, my parents, they have a half an acre estate. And I remember being in the backyard playing with my Tonka toys and playing in the dirt. And I would be playing with my friend Joey, who lived 4 doors down the street on the left-hand side. And he would come over every day, and him and I would be in the backyard playing Tonka toys. And then Christmas came around, and my mom and dad, more so my mom, is just, crazy about Christmas. She puts the stockings up and all that stuff. The tree, she goes bananas on Christmas. And so I said, well, we got to make a stocking for Joey. And she said, who's Joey? And I said, Joey, the one I play with every single day in the backyard. And she says, honey, you just play with yourself back there. She goes, I see you talking, but you're there by yourself.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, I thought I was losing my mind.
Oh, gosh.
And at that same time, believe it or not, my brother, who was and still is 18 years older than myself, was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So, and also obsessive compulsive schizophrenia. So at that same time, I'm, hearing voices that nobody else is seeing, and my brother's hearing voices, and I'm not seeing what he's hearing.
Oh,
so
wow.
It really was a curse for me from 6 years of age and until my early 20s. It lessened every year. So the first few years, it was really, really hard to kind of like not focus on spirit. So every time that I would start seeing what I appear to be in spirit, I would look the other way. I'd look to the left if they were on the right. If they were, straight ahead of me, I would look to the left. I wouldn't acknowledge them. I just would pretend that they weren't there. And the reason why is because I just did not want to accept that. I just felt like if I did acknowledge it, it would go away. And that's how it all started for me going back years ago. And it wasn't until my early 20s when I was in my dorm room at USC, I woke up and I had a vision, actually, because in that vision, Mother Teresa came into the vision. And this is going back to 1995 when I was in college. And she, of course, was still living at that time. And she came into my dream and she had her arms, wide open. And then there was 4 missionary men standing behind her, and they were guiding me and walking me into this village. So I instantly called 411 and asked for a Catholic church because, I grew up Catholic, but I never really considered myself Catholic. And the operator says, well, we have St. Viviana's Cathedral in downtown Los Angeles. And of course, that was when the cathedral was still there. And I said, okay, great. So I called up the number and I said, can you tell me something about Mother Teresa? And the operator said, or the receptionist said, well, we have the brothers of Mother Teresa and we have the sisters of Mother Teresa. Which one would you like? And I was just about ready to say the sisters because you would think, sisters, woman, Mother Teresa.
Right.
And at that same time, that voice that I heard as a child, that same voice, that same distinct voice says, no, ask for the brothers of Mother Teresa. So I asked for the brothers of Mother Teresa and basically just said, hey, can you tell me anything about Mother Teresa? I didn't want to tell the guy I had a dream. He thought it was probably a Looney Tune. So he goes, yeah, sure. Where are you located? I says, I'm right down here at USC. And he goes, oh, we're just right up the 3 blocks up the street and off of Figueroa. And there's a man that just came in from India that I'm sure he would love to talk to you about it. So I drove my 1991 Acura Integra up Figueroa, on Sunday morning. And when I walked up to this house, this Caucasian man said, oh, you must be Tim. And I said, yes. And so he opened the door. And then this Indian man was there. And that Indian man and I sat down on the couch. First thing that he said is, he goes, so you had a dream to come to come to India. And I just lost it. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is like out of a movie. Right. Long story short is I found myself in Calcutta, India, 3 months later. And I was working with hands-on with Mother Teresa for a week and a half. What I didn't realize at the time was I just thought it was just a regular missionary. He dressed in very missionary plain clothing. I didn't realize that he was the head of the worldwide male missionaries. And so when I got back from India, then I realized, okay, I don't have an illness. I don't have any mental disease. It's obviously a gift and pursue it. And then since then, my career's just taken off.
Yeah. Wow. That's so fascinating about, all of that. But when you were a kid and you were playing with this Joey, so then when you said that you wouldn't, if the spirit was over here, you would look the other way. How did you know to differentiate between what was a spirit and what was actually a normal human being? Because it sounded like you thought Joey was real. So what became the thing where you could tell them apart?
So if anybody else wasn't looking off to the left and I would see people there, then I would assume that they were in spirit. Now, if that person did look off to the left and say, oh, look at that lady who just sat down, and I'm like, okay, that's a real person. But there are many times when I would look off to the left or look off the right and I wouldn't see anything, then I would realize at that moment, okay, there's nobody there, whether human or in spirit. But as I got older, it was starting to get more faint. Like the energy was coming through from spirit was coming through more faint. Like when I was a kid, I saw Joey as I'm seeing a human being. Okay. And then as I was in my 3rd and 4th and 5th grade, it started to weaken. So then I was able to kind of tell more human versus spirit. It was still difficult, but I was able to hear and see more clearly with that energy lessening as I got older.
Okay, and did you ever figure out who Joey was? Was there some lore that there was a little boy that had died? Like, did you ever figure that out? Or
Never did. No, never did. I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and so the neighborhood that I was in was an older neighborhood, so he could have passed over in that neighborhood. What I feel is it was just a spirit companion. I don't feel it was anybody that was trapped to the land or down the street as he said he was. I feel it was just a spirit companion, being there with me and saying, hey, listen, you can see us.
That is so fascinating. Wow. So then how do you see, so it sounds like you see somebody and then you also hear them. How do you describe to people who aren't sure what a medium is? How do you describe it to them?
Sure. So all mediums like myself are psychic. So we have psychic ability, but not all psychics are mediums. There are some psychics that can do mediumship, some can't. But all mediums are psychic because of our sensitivity. I always tell people that mediums, connect with people who have crossed over. And I always tell clients, the only time that you need a medium is to listen from them.
Mm.
Anytime that you want to talk to them on your own, oh, they'll hear you. You don't ever need a medium to talk to them. For example, a mother or father or a grandmother or grandfather who's passed over, you never need to come to me to tell them, oh, I'm getting married, or I just want to let you know happy birthday, or I just want to let you know I love you. No, that's not necessary. You can do that on your own. The only time that you need a medium is when you sit down, as you do in front of me, and I tell you who's coming through and what they're saying. And I have a really strict policy when I've been doing this work, and I've been doing it for 23 years full time.
Yeah.
Last year, up until last year, I was doing 6 sittings a day, 4 days a week. And then last year I thought, well, gosh, I'm starting to get a little bit tired when I'm doing the 6th sitting. I'm going to shave that off.
Yeah.
Now I leave an hour early and I feel like I'm cutting school. So I'm really happy when I get home and I'm excited and I play with my dog. The excitement's back again because I feel like I'm cutting school. But yeah, I've done this work for 23 years full time. I've now done over 16,000 one-on-one sittings in 8 countries. And death does not discriminate, as I always tell my clients. No matter where you are on the planet, no matter if you're wealthy or poor, thin or fat, black or white, Jewish or Catholic, it doesn't matter. Death does not discriminate. People are being affected by death all over the world. Mm. So when I come to Italy, all I need is a translator. As long as you have a translator, if it's not in English, it's fine. Because what it is they send the thought across from spirit.
That's what I was going to ask you. If there's like a German relative and they don't speak English, they can send you pictures?
Yes, it's basically by thought. So they'll send me images, they'll send me scents, sounds, they'll show me images of different things when they were a child or a young adult or whatever it may be in order for me to let that client know what's coming through.
Got it. Well, so I'm always curious how you engage with normal life with this gift. Do you have dead people pestering you all the time to deliver messages to people when you're at the grocery store? Can you go into a crowd without spirits coming through? Can you turn it on and off?
Sure.
Like even today, do you have like a whole bunch of people that you are just holding back that, when you have conversations with people? Or is it you can kind of calm yourself and just not accept it? Or are they always like banging at your door?
Well, fast forward to me as an adult now, after doing this work over 23 years now, being in large crowds is kind of hard just because there's so much energy. And it's not so much energy that's coming in from, the people that are living. It's the energy and spirit that I feel for the people that are connected to those people. So that at times is still a little difficult.
Okay.
So how I get by it, I just have like 2 or 3 vodka sodas and I'm like, okay, I can deal with this, just being as honest as possible.
Yeah.
But getting back to where I started, when I got back from India, I realized going back to this country, how materially wealthy this country is. But I also realized how spiritually bankrupt we are. And coming from India, I realized they're so spiritually wealthy, but materially bankrupt. But, getting back from India, that's when everything started. And I had to start doing an opening meditation. And this is getting back to your question, do they pester you, this and that? Well, I've managed a way that every time that a person sits with me, we do a 2-minute closed-eyed meditation. If they want to keep their eyes open, they can. I close my eyes. But I do a 2-minute guided meditation, opening meditation. I proceed with the sitting. And then when I'm done with the sitting, I do a 2-minute guided closing meditation just to shut down. All that's doing, Brandy, is it's basically telling spirit, okay, he's open for work, now he's closed for work. So when I'm open for work, it's like the barbershop light is spinning. Okay. And then when I do the closing meditation, it's like the barbershop light is stopped spinning. And so they'll realize I'm closed. And that's how they leave me alone.
And do they really? Do they obey that?
For the most part.
Okay.
For the most part. And I still remember, this is going back probably about 18 years ago. I woke up 2:00 in the morning and I had to take a leak, So I'm walking down the hallway and, And of course, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm just waking up. I can't really see. The lights are off. So, I knew the first door was the hallway. So I'm like, okay, that's not that one. So I just kept on going the next door. That's the toilet. Know where the toilet is. Put the toilet seat down so I could sit down and pee without having to aim. And as I was sitting down on the toilet seat, I just kind of like glanced up and I saw this woman hanging from my rafters with a rope around her neck.
Oh my
It
God,
scared
Tim.
the hell out of me so much that, I kind of fell off the toilet seat. How I remember this is because I remember I had to wipe the toilet seat with toilet paper because I made a little bit of a mess.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I went back to bed that night and I told Spirit, I said, I will do this work for you, but you got to respect my off time. If you don't respect my off time, I'm not going to do this work. And once I've said that for the last 18 years, it's only happened about 5 times.
Wow. Because I imagine that is your life everywhere you go are people, like zombies coming out of the woodwork. I'm like, this must be miserable. But I love that you've set a boundary and that actually most of them are following it. I'm
glad you said zombies because, people think that spirit can be sometimes negative. And yeah, spirit is positive and spirit is negative. When a person crosses over, if they're a good person, that's how they are. If a person passes over, they're an evil person or a bad person, yeah, that's how they are. They just are out of the body. So that's another reason why I do the opening 2-minute guided meditation, because I basically place God's white light all around the session and around me. And I say God, I'm old fashioned. If you don't want to say God, you can say spirit, you can say the universe, you can say Mother Earth. But I place that energy around me so only higher vibration energy can come in, such as loved ones that a person wants to connect with. And I trust it. Now, again, there's a lot of trial and error doing this over the years. And I still remember, this is going back probably about 20 years ago. And of course, I did the opening meditation. I put God's white light all around the room and started the sitting. And I started to proceed. And I said, this on your mom's side of the family, there's this one male that's coming through. I said, he's not a grandfather and he's not an uncle by marriage. He's an uncle by blood. And then I clenched my stomach and I must have had like a sour look on my face. And my client said, are you okay? And I said, I don't think so. And she goes, would you like to stop the sitting? I said, no, it's not about me. It's about the man that's coming in. It doesn't make me feel comfortable. And she goes, yes, he didn't make me feel comfortable either. He molested me when I was a child.
Oh, wow.
So looking back on that, of course, trial and error. So whenever something like that comes in the future, which is rare, but sometimes it still comes in the sitting, I basically say, you know what? I'm not going to connect because I don't want to make it an icky situation for myself. And I don't want to make it an icky situation for the client. But looking back at that person that was coming through, he wasn't there to scare her. He was there to apologize. And I ended I didn't end the session, but I ended it with that man. I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to focus on someone else. And she goes, oh, please do. But looking back on that, I should have stayed with it. And I know that the energy that was coming through there was to apologize, which has happened many other times when I've sensed an energy that wasn't the best, but I kind of like gave a little bit of time to see what they were saying. And then many times it's their way of saying, I really messed up. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And so there's so much healing that takes place when that happens.
Oh, yeah. I remember in one of our sessions, we had somebody who was kind of on the edge like that. And I remember you saying something about like, I don't really love this guy's energy. I don't think we're going to go here. And there were other people, but I appreciate that because I feel like people who maybe want to do something like this, do a sitting with someone like you or with you, may feel nervous if they have somebody that gives them those feelings. Like I wouldn't want to let them in, but knowing that you get the feeling too, and you discern that and have a good judgment about that would maybe make people feel safer.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you consider as the best or one of the best parts of being a medium?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel transformation and healing. I remember years back, and I had this husband and wife come in, and I still remember them, Patty and Mike, and they had a daughter that passed over, and I didn't know that they were looking for a child. They just came in, they sat down, had the sitting, and of course I saw their daughter Heather, and I still remember this. Out of all these years, the names of the parents and the name of the daughter, and she was like 19 years of age, and I said just a really abrupt ending that she had, and they said yes, she committed suicide. And then I proceeded and I did the sitting. And at the very end of the sitting, the woman looked at me because I could tell that she was a little skeptical coming in. I think the husband wanted to come in more than she did. But at the very end, she goes, my husband and I have been in weekly therapy for the last year over the death of our daughter. I have received more healing and peace of mind in this last 50 minutes than I did in the last year with my therapist. So that really said to me, I'm like, wow, you're doing some good work. Now, I'm not putting down therapy. I think everybody on the planet should be in therapy.
Yeah, same.
Therapists are great, but sometimes therapists can't, talk about the death aspect because they're not familiar with it or they're not comfortable with it. But when I'm doing my mediumship, the validations that come in so strong, the details come through so clear that the client knows, okay, he's connecting with my daughter.
Yeah, right. Oh, I mean, and I feel like that's why we've been going to you for so long, is because when you just sit in the presence of a loved one that you can no longer sit in their presence, it's such an amazing thing. And you don't realize that part of you that's empty and how it can get filled up, even if that person isn't here. But to just hear messages or familiar things and the words coming from you. So I'm not surprised that was your answer about what the best part is, because I feel like being able to give that to people, something that's really not givable by anybody else, that doesn't have this gift. I feel like that is such a unique, special thing to give people.
Thank you. But I like to respond to that is, it doesn't matter who you are on the planet, as long as you do your job 110% as best as you possibly can. So for my job in this lifetime, I'm a medium. So, I do my job 110% as best as I can. I'm never running late for a session. I start on time. I am there at the office. I meditate before. I give 110%. And whether you're a school teacher or whether you're a stay-at-home mom or whether you're an accountant or whether you're an attorney, as long as you do your job 110% as best as you possibly can, that's the most important thing. I mean, whether you're someone who's high up on the totem pole, such as like the Pope or the Dalai Lama, or someone who's low on the totem pole, as far as someone who's living in a shanty or someone who's living in a shack, as long as you give of life and give of to your family and friends 110% as best as you possibly can, there's no difference from me to anybody else.
Yeah, but you have a really cool superpower. Like, just for a second, like, you just, like, you are like a superhero. Like, not all of us, anybody could go be an accountant, but not anybody, it seems like, could go be a medium. Do you think anybody could go be a medium, or do you think you have a special gift?
Yeah, either you have it or you don't. Either you're born with it or you're not born with it.
You're like, yeah, I'm pretty cool. Okay. That's hilarious. Speaking of when you were saying that you were feeling that sensation in your body about being sort of doubled over and that stomach pain, I doubt you'll remember this, but there was a time when you were doing a reading for me, and my husband's grandma was coming through with a message for my daughter, who's like super girly and she loves to have her nails painted. It's something we do. And even her dad, they paint their nails together. And you were trying to convey that part, like the girly part. And all of a sudden I smelled, and I think you smelled it too, a really strong nail salon smell. But there was no nail salon anywhere. And I remember being like, this is so potent. I smell this, and and then it was gone. It was like 1 minute later, it was gone. Mm-hmm. How do we make sense of that? Like, how do spirits make that happen?
Mm-hmm. It's by thought. So even today, I did a handful of sittings today. This one client, her father stepped back and another man stepped in, and that was her grandfather. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of alcohol. And she goes, excuse me? And I said, I'm smelling a lot of alcohol on him. Now, of course, she didn't smell it, but she goes, yes, my grandfather was an alcoholic. Mm. But what they will do is they will send through that energy as a thought. How it works, Brandy, is like this. It's like whether I'm on the phone with you right now or whether I'm in person with you, if I keep on, visualizing for you to scratch your nose, itch your nose, I'm pretty sure I could probably get you to do it within about 20, 25 minutes,
Okay.
And that's my thought onto you. Now, those on spirit side, what they will do is if they want to get something through, they will send that thought through. So if it's alcohol, they'll keep on sending that across alcohol, 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 alcohol over and over again until the medium picks it up.
Interesting. Yeah.
And if you smelt that nail polish, then you just happen to get a glimpse of what I get quite often.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Okay, so really light question here. What happens when we die, Tim?
Well, it depends on the person. It's a very individualistic question. When a person passes, whether you're 10 years of age or whether you're 110 years of age, all within 7 seconds, you have what's called your life review. So have you heard of those people that, they had like a near death experience, or they fall off a ladder or they almost get hit by a bus.
Yeah.
And of course they escaped, and they say, oh my God, my whole life just flashed ahead of me, in front of me. Well, what that's all about is the same thing is that when you die, you see all the good and all the bad that you have done in your entire life. And again, whether you're 10 years of age or whether you're 110 years of age. And I always tell my clients, I'm a medium, and people respond back to me saying that I'm a very, very talented medium. But I always respond back by, when I do this work, it has to come from my heart. It has to come from the soul. And when a person has that life, then it flashes before them, they're seeing all the good and all the bad. When I pass over, I always tell clients, I'm a medium, but I'm far from a saint. I know that there's probably going to be maybe 90% of good that I'll see, and there's going to be 10% that I'm not going to be probably too happy with, over the lifetime, things that I've said, whether directly or indirectly or consciously or unconsciously, where I've, affected somebody in a negative way. I'll see that and I'll feel that. And when I feel that, or any person feels that, what they want to do is they want to fix that. So that's why sometimes, after, let's just say a parent crosses over, and the little baby grandson says, I keep on saying grandpa on my door. Well, is grandpa stuck? Or is that little boy's grandfather stuck? I say, no, absolutely not. That person wants the family to know that they're still there. Sometimes they want to come through and they want to apologize to the parents for the abuse that father gave to the father of the child or the mother of the child. So all within 7 seconds, you have that life review, and you see all the good you've done, all the bad you've done. What I always tell my clients is I bring this life review, but I also let them know, as I said, when you're out in your driveway and you're washing your car with a sponge and soap suds, and the whole car is washed, and you start taking the hose and you keep on hosing off the car, what are you looking for? Can you answer that?
A clean car?
No, you're not looking for a clean car. You're looking for what's dirty so you can fix it.
Ah.
So basically, you're cleaning the hood, you're cleaning the fender, and if there's a bird poop or whatever, you put the hose on the side and you take the sponge and you keep on scraping that seat because you want to make sure that the car is clean. But what's standing out is the dirty spots still, the spots that you've missed.
Ah, got it.
And you want to come back and you want to fix that. And that's the same thing about when a person passes over. You're hosing off the car, so to speak, and 90% of the car is clean, but 10% is like, oh, I really, lied to my wife. I really was rude to my daughter, or I was abusive to my nephew, or whatever it may be. You want to go back and fix that.
Wow. And so is the going back and fixing that's part of giving the message to the loved one to say, I apologize for this. But then is there do you believe in, or have you seen evidence of reincarnation, someone coming back to right a wrong? Or what happens after the 7-second review, after the messages are given? Is there another realm that the spirits go to?
When you make that crossing and you make that transition, what you do is you go to the astral level. And all it is just basically like a holding area. It's like a city, just like, we have here. And it's just basically a holding area until you wait until the other loved ones cross over.
What are the outfits like there really fast? Is there I'm thinking the movie Defending Your Life. What does this visually look like? Or is it just energy?
It's energy,
Okay.
and there's no things of clothing, but it's just you kind of have like a cloak on, and so it's not about any type of clothing. It's just more of a cloak. But there's a fascinating book, if you can find it. I believe it was written in 1920, but it's called The Blue Island, and it's written by W.T. Stead. I think it's written by W.T. Stead, but the woman who did the automatic writing, I think her name was Grace Cook. I'm not too sure, but if you Google the Blue Island,
Okay.
it'll come up. And the book is kind of out of print, of course. But if you can find it, it's a really, really good book about what it's like when a person passes over. What it was is, back when the Titanic was built, the Titanic was the world's safest and strongest ship that even God could not even sink it. And that was really what screwed them all up, is when they said that. Because whenever you mess with an energy like that, it says even God can't even screw this up. It'll get screwed up. And so basically, there's a spiritualist on board named W.T. Stead, and different seances, which is, I call my sittings, but basically they're old-fashioned seances. And back in England, he was in different seances, different mediums came to him in seances and said, never taken a maiden voyage of an ocean liner. And he was told that 2 or 3 different times in seances in England, at the turn of the century. And then, of course, the Titanic was built. So how can that ever sink? With God can't even sink it. Well, what happened is that, everybody, the people that perish. But there's a woman, a little like English woman in her 70s. She was an automatic writer. And what that is a person who just puts a pen in your opposite hand and you just start writing. You don't know what you're writing, but Spirit's basically writing for you. That's what's called an automatic writer.
Wow.
And this woman started writing these different accounts of the sinking of the Titanic, things that nobody else knew, things that it was verified that nobody else knew. It wasn't public knowledge. And in that book, as she wrote that, she was basically the medium for W.T. Stead, who died on the ship. And he basically said that when they basically waited for the very, very last person to pass. And he says, once the very last person perished, he goes, we were like on a super, as they said it in the book, a supersonic lift, which is basically a supersonic elevator. But we were only going just ever so gently, but we could tell it was going, supersonic. And then we all ended up at this island, and all of our loved ones were there waiting for us. And that's what's called the Blue Island. So again, during that 7 seconds, when you cross over, you have that life review, of course. If it's a sudden passing, such as murder, or something that's a complete accident, sometimes the chances are the loved ones that you knew will not be there greeting you because they did not know that you're crossing over.
They didn't get the invitation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you will always be greeted by equal or better. So you could be greeted by an angel or a spirit guide, someone of a higher realm to guide you and say, hey, you come over here now. Once you get situated, and we'll get your family notified. Now, when a person's on hospice, you see this many, many, many times when a person's like on hospice and the person's pointing to the wall and says, there's my Uncle Jerry.
Yeah.
And like, no, Mom, Uncle Jerry died 3 years ago. No, he's right here. Is she delusional? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
She's basically seeing spirit come through because they're basically knowing that this woman's about ready to pass. She's been in hospice for 3 months. They're there to greet her.
Wow. That's fascinating. I just had a friend whose husband was on hospice, and that was one of the ways that she knew he was getting close, is because he was starting to see family members. So that was her alert that the time was coming to an end. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to whomever you want? Like, could you try to connect with Michael Jackson if somebody wanted to? Controversial choice, I know.
Your questions are great. They're just like right to the point, and
they're like a 10-year-old's questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like making sure. I'm like, okay, what's the next one? I'm like, what is she going to ask next? I've been interviewed hundreds of times, and I've been interviewed, in different newspaper articles and magazine articles worldwide. And your questions are great. It's just like boom, boom, boom. I'm like, this is great. I love it. So yes,
yes,
if yes, as long as you have a family member or a friend. Now, I did.
Wait, that's like connected to him?
Exactly.
Or, what if
question.
What if his last name is my middle name?
If you don't have a connection, as far as knowing the person, then it still can be possible, but it's extremely rare. Like I did one of my Paula Casino shows. This is going back several years ago. And I came to this woman and I brought to this man who ended his life, so forth and so on. Now, I didn't know who it was. I just thought it was her boyfriend. And then everybody told me, wow, you brought through Robin Williams. And I'm like, huh? And they said, yeah, that woman you went to. I'm like, no, that was her boyfriend. yeah, that was Robin Williams. Everything you said was how he passed.
No
And
way.
she actually came up to me at the very end and she goes, yes, he wasn't my boyfriend, but him and I dated, and it was Robin Williams.
Oh,
So he
wow.
came through, but he came through for her because they had that link.
Yeah, right.
I've been asked to do TV shows. I want you to contact Marilyn Monroe. I'm like, okay, great. Do we have any family members or friends of hers that are there? Oh, no. We just want to see if she comes through. I'm like, no, sorry, it doesn't work that way.
Okay, well then, so the answer to my question is a no. But now I'm on a hunt for somebody who does have a connection to him, or someone else. I'm sure I could find a a less controversial celebrity, but that's fascinating. Okay, so so that makes sense that you can't just call up somebody that you have
I
no
heard
connection
what
to.
you're saying, where you're going with it, and I think that's cool and all. If I were you, like for example, if you're wanting to start a new career, or if you want a career getting launched, or you need a certain contract to be established, I would call in Spirit and say, anybody on Spirit side who can help me with this, please come. I feel having like a CFO that has crossed over who launches your product is better than contacting Michael Jackson. And that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
in my opinion.
Oh, I mean, I'm already doing the other thing that you mentioned. I already am always like spirit guides, anybody, I have like little people that I connect to, but I just thought more for entertainment. Like if you're a super fan of somebody, but that makes sense. And there should be boundaries. And I understand that. One of the other times that I won't ever forget was a reading I had with you where you said something like, Brandy, it's going to be really interesting what you end up doing. And you mentioned something about me talking in front of lots of, as you put it, women with babies. And this is before I had kids, which is just interesting. But when I heard you say, it's going to be interesting what you end up doing, my overthinking, sometimes pessimistic brain was like, oh my God, what does that mean? And I think I even said to you, is that like I lose my legs in a hot air ballooning accident? Like just when you say interesting, like just how interesting are we talking about? I was trying to get more information. Like, did you mean interesting bad, interesting good? And you were very serious with me. And you said something like, Brandy, you have to be careful what you focus your mind on. And I never forgot it. So admittedly, my mind still overthinks some dark things, but I sometimes think about where I'm at in life. And I wonder, is this what Tim meant by interesting? So you've stamped yourself into my life in that way that I'm always like, is this the interesting Tim was talking about?
Sure, absolutely. For your listening audience that you have, there's obviously women who have either aborted, miscarried, or have had stillborns. Now, if a woman, hasn't gone through that, then count yourself lucky, and that's a blessing. But even my last sitting today, my fifth sitting before I zoomed over from Newport Beach back to the house here to do this with you, I was looking at this woman's lap. And of course, I'm in a room with this woman and she's only about 35 years of age. And I just keep on looking down in her lap, but more towards the vagina area. Oh. And she kind of like looked at me and she goes, everything okay? And I said, yeah, there's two babies on your lap. I'm just trying to figure out if it's a boy or a girl. And she goes, oh, okay. So I just kept on looking at her lap and I'm like, okay, this one's a boy. He was aborted. And this is a girl. She was a stillborn. Oh. The lady lost it.
Of course.
She just basically started wailing. Oh. And she goes, I've never forgiven myself for having that abortion. I said, well, the boy was the abortion. I said, the girl was the miscarriage. And then she just started crying again. She goes, I always told my husband and my girlfriends the one I miscarried, I knew it was a girl. And whenever children, when I say children, babies, miscarriages, abortions, and children under 3 years of age, anytime one of those comes into a sitting, I always tell my clients that's the highest amount of love that comes into a sitting. It's unconditional love. They don't care, and that in pets as well. They don't care who you are or where you're from. The only thing they care about is just receiving unconditional love. So, on a daily basis, Brandy, I see miscarriages, abortions, stillborns. And of course, I record all the sessions for the client. We only hold the recordings for 3 weeks. And then after that, we delete them. Yeah. Just because we have no use for them. So we always tell the clients, if you don't get it within the week, let us know and we'll resend it to you before it's erased. But that recording is for you to share with other family members or keep to yourself, or it's up to you if you want to delete it. Yeah. It's your recording. But so much healing comes in from doing this work, and every day is very individualistic. It's different from day to day.
That's so cool. Yeah. And I remember some of these things happening with us and pets and things. And it's just, you can't describe the feeling of being in that energy and getting those messages. It's just amazing.
I had a client a few years ago, and her German Shepherd came in, and then she started to laugh after she started crying. She goes, "Isn't it crazy? I'm crying over my German Shepherd, but my father, who's standing right here in spirit, I'm not even crying over for him." And I'm like, well, it's unconditional love that's coming in. But
yeah.
Another thing, as far as all of us that are on the planet, young, old, middle-aged, we're all here for a reason. And when we are on spirit side, all of us, and before we incarnate, we are there in soul form. And before we incarnate into that baby's body, we stand there with a guide. If you don't want to use the word guide, you can interpret that as basically the best concierge service at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, where basically you can tell that person anything that you want, and they just keep on smiling and they keep on saying, "Okay, how can I help you? Okay, how can I help you?" And you're like, "You're an idiot. How can I help you?"
Like an Alexa or a Siri.
Exactly. How can I help you? But Alexa with more feeling and more empathy and more unconditional love.
Sentient, yes.
Yeah, and before you incarnate, that guide will say, "Okay, Brandy, are you sure you want to incarnate? That's going to be your mother. That's going to be your father. That's the age you're going to die. Those are uphill battles you're going to have. That's the situations that you're going to be going through. Are you wanting to do this?" And the reason why you're here is because you said yes. And when that child is born, that soul goes into that body. When the umbilical cord is cut, that is when the soul forgets what it signed on to do. So technically, you and me and every other adult on the planet right now are walking around aimlessly wondering what else we signed on to do.
Shit.
Really.
That's the interesting part, Tim. You're scaring me again.
So the thing is that, in life, you don't have really any enemies, and you don't have any lovers or husbands or wives or best friends. You only have teachers. And each person's a teacher teaching you something. So sometimes you see people who, are born dirt poor, and then they're rich and famous for the last 30, 40 years of their life. Sometimes you have people who are rich and famous, up until 25, and then they go through bankruptcy and they're living on the street for the last 30 years.
Yeah. And
you might say, well, what's that all about? Well, that person had obviously learned humility in this lifetime. So are you going to do it in the beginning, or are you going to do it in the end? And sometimes that's why a lot of things at the very end of a person's life kind of happens. Like a lot of things that some people would look at as horrible things, I look at them as a lot of lessons. It had to be done, and you just waited longer than you should have to learn these lessons.
Wow.
So with that being said, not to scare you, I would say anytime that you go out and there's something difficult, just say, "Okay, Spirit, bring it on. What is it I'm supposed to learn? Show me the good. What's the good? What am I supposed to learn?" And if you keep on saying that over and over again, as I say, "God, show me the good," then Spirit, the universe, God, will actually show you what the good is and what the lesson is that you're supposed to learn. So then you can eradicate it and move on and do something else.
Yeah, that feels kind of life-changing, huh? Yeah, I'm gonna have to breathe that in and think about that. That feels very, very profound. So what things do you do differently now, knowing what you know? Are you gluten and dairy free because you know that that's the way you're supposed to do it? Or do you know that that's pointless, and so you live life to the fullest and indulge? How does having this lens give you an insight into living your life that we mere mortals might not have? I mean, I know you're immortal, but you know.
I'm just, like I said, I'm just a lay person, in a human body that just has this ability to connect with people on the spirit side. But, for me, I exercise 4 days a week. And the reason why I exercise, it's called a trainer at the gym, which is basically called a paid babysitter. So I have a paid babysitter that waits for me 4 days a week at the gym with the clipboard, and he works my butt off 4 days a week. Now, I sit, in the office for 5-6 hours a day.
Yeah,
and
right.
So I need that exercise for me. Now, does it help my ability? Absolutely. It keeps my mind sharp and clear. But as far as vegan, this or that, I tell all my friends, and I'll tell everyone in your listening audience, listen to your body. If your body says, "You know what, I don't want any meat tonight, I just want to do vegetables," then listen to your body. I rarely eat red meat, but I mean, this is going back about a month ago. I ordered a burger. And they looked at me like, you're ordering a burger? And I'm like, yeah, I'm craving it. I must be craving iron or something, but I'm craving it. Haven't had the burger since,
Yeah.
So you listen to your body. And I think if you can listen to your body, that's the most important thing. But for me, I have to make sure that I meditate every day, to make sure that, I get a good night's sleep before the next day of sittings, in order to have a clear mind.
Yeah. So I saw on one of your videos that you love murder mystery shows. And by the way, to the listeners, Tim does these little quick bite-sized videos that answer people's questions, and they're always super fascinating. But so I saw on one of those that you love murder mystery shows. Has it ever happened where you're watching that show, something like Unsolved Mysteries, and you get some intel from spirit about it? Like us regular people watch that show and we go like, I bet that person did it. But you have a direct line to some other knowledge. Does that ever happen for you? Are you solving murders?
It does sometimes when I'm watching Forensic Files or Dateline.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes. That's a sometimes. However, I always tell Spirit, leave me alone. This is my entertainment. That's really the God honest truth. And people say, you're watching murder mysteries and you're a spiritual person and you're doing this work. I mean, that's really negative energy. That's really bad energy. And I'm like, for me, it's a relief because, there's a lot of times clients come into the office and, the husband comes through and he was found floating down next to his boat. And the woman said, we don't know if it's suicide or murder. And I sometimes can tell, okay, it's murder or it's definitely a suicide.
Yeah.
And they want to know, who did it, if it's, of course, murder. And I many times I can't figure out who it is. Sometimes I'm able to kind of pinpoint what was happening, what they were seeing right before they were killed. But the reason why I watch the murder mysteries is because at the end of those shows, they always catch the person and they always usually get life in prison without the possibility of parole. And that makes me happy because that's closure for me.
Right.
It's like, okay, good, there's closure. Because at times, sometimes a client does not get the closure, like who murdered my daughter,
Right.
Who is this person, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, right. Except for Unsolved Mysteries, which is just, it's like the title says unsolved, and yet at the end of every episode, I'm like, how do they not know this? And then I'm like, oh, I'm the one that watched a show called Unsolved Mysteries. This is my bad.
I got a phone call, this is going back probably 18, 19 years ago, and this is when I was answering the phone myself, taking calls. And I picked up the phone, and this man in this very, very deep voice says, is this Timothy Braun? And I'm like, nobody calls me Timothy. And especially with this deep voice, I'm like, yes, this is Tim Braun. And he goes, this is Detective so-and-so with the Ontario Police Department. I'm like, yes. I mean, of course I'm scared, I'm like,
Sure.
Oh my God, what's going on? I mean, I get nervous when I walk out of Pavilion's grocery store and I don't buy something. I feel like they think that I'm shoplifting. That's how sensitive I am.
Okay. So to get the police calling you is like a big deal.
Exactly. I'm like, I feel like looking at the checkers. I'm like, okay, I just came in here to look. I didn't steal anything. So I really have this like really sensitive complex there. But the man called up and I said, how can I help you? And he goes, well, there's been a murder up here in Fontana. He goes, I heard you're very good at what you do. Would you be interested in coming out here to Fontana? I said, no. I said, I just don't do that. And he goes, this is the story. The boyfriend already admitted to killing his girlfriend and putting her in the trash receptacle. I said, okay, then what do you need me for? He says, well, we're just trying to find the body. We don't know if it's in the Ontario dump or the Riverside dump. And I said, I don't know. I don't do work like this. And he goes, well, we were looking into the Ontario dump. And I just blurted out, I'm like, nope, she's in the Riverside dump. Oh. And he goes, I thought you don't do this. And I'm like, I don't. But she's not in the Ontario dump. She's in the Riverside dump. And he goes, well, we can send a squad car out and we can have you come to both dumps. And I'm like, no, not necessary. Let's leave it like that. So anyways, as you would have it, fast forward like 2 weeks, I just happened to turn on the news at a certain time, like 5:35 or something like that. And it basically had that case. And they said, woman just found in Riverside dump. Oh, and so man. I know that I I could do that, but I just don't. I just rather watch it on Dateline and let everybody else do the dirty work.
Does it seem like just too dark and too sad?
It's heavy.
Yeah,
it's heavy.
Yeah, I don't blame you for that.
It's a heaviness there. And, I always tell clients, I'm a medium, so I'm basically like a muffler man. So I'm not an astrologer, break man. I'm not a psychic, even though I am, but I don't advertise as that. So I'm not an engine person. I just focus in on the mufflers. And mufflers for me is mediumship. And that's what I'm good at. And that's what I stick to.
Yeah. What would you say is your most memorable reading that you've ever had? Is there one that sticks out for you?
PG-13.
No.
PG, rated R.
I mean, we go anywhere here, Tim.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Uh-oh.
There's so
what
many of them.
There's so many.
Well, I'll give you a couple. I'll give you, this is kind of like the rated R one.
Okay.
And this is just basically, I'm telling the story because as a medium, no matter how crazy it sounds, we have to trust ourselves and we have to go out on a limb and say things.
Okay.
And so this woman came in and she sat down and her fiance was coming through and hugging her and giving his age. I think he was like 27 years of age. And then all of a sudden I said, oh, he has really blonde hair. And she goes, well, I had two boyfriends, and tell you the truth, she goes, one we lived with, but he broke up with me. And then the other one was my fiance at the end. Which one is it? And I said, no, he's like 27 years of age. And she goes, well, they're both 28 years of age. I'm like, okay, well, close enough. So what I did is I closed my eyes and I just took a deep breath and I came from love. And I said, sir, even though that I'm much older than the 27-year-old, I just said, sir, if you can you mentally give me some information to share with her to help provide healing for her?
Oh, jeez.
And I said it very sincerely with love.
Right.
And if you ever want to manifest something in life, whatever it may be, come from love. Don't come from ego or greed, come from love, and you'll get your wish. So I opened my eyes and my eyes must have bugged open. She goes, what? Like I kind of scared her. And I said, I can't believe I'm going to say this. She goes, no, say it. And I said, well, when he gets an erection, he said that his penis veers off to the left.
Oh my God. Hilarious.
And once I said that to her, she started breaking down crying. And she goes, that's not my fiance. That's not even my boyfriend. That's my first love.
Oh.
And so she wasn't even expecting him to come into the sitting. She didn't even invite him in.
How old was she that she has like 3 lovers that had passed? Was she older?
No, she's only in her early 30s.
Whoa.
So it's just,
That's wild.
So, I mean, it's just, whether it's for 2 years or 3 years or 1 year, I mean, it still is a lover.
Yeah.
So that showed the validation that was not her fiance, and it showed the validation that wasn't her boyfriend that broke up with her, that she used to live with. It showed that he was the first one. Now that's on rated R1. I would say a rated PG-13 would be, as I had this one client, I still remember her name because her name was Cinnamon. And who names her child Cinnamon, I don't know. But I remember
a baker, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe a baker. So her name was Cinnamon. She came in for a sitting. This is 23 years ago because this is at my Torrance office, my first office. And so she sat down. I did the sitting for her. And then like 3 weeks later, she comes back in all excited, but she brings her tow truck driver looking husband.
Okay.
And so the reason why I say tow truck driver looking husband is because he looked like a tow truck driver, and he sat down and he crossed his arms and he crossed his legs, and he just can tell he didn't want to be there. But she saw me 3 weeks earlier. She had a great experience. She had a great sitting. So she wanted to share it with him.
Okay.
So anyways, I proceeded to tell the sitting, I said, there's this one male coming through. And I said, he's telling me that he was in Vietnam with you. And he just basically said very sarcastically, I had 4 friends in Vietnam and they all died. Take your pick. And he said it really rude.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So I basically closed my eyes just for a second, opened back up, came from love. And when I closed my eyes, I said to the man in spirit, I says, can you help him? He's hurting, And what that man in spirit did is he put his hand over his testicles and said, tell him my left testicle was shot off. And once I said that to him, his demeanor totally changed. He put his head between his knees and started crying.
Oh.
And he goes, and then after about a minute or two, he composed himself. I can tell it was a very shocking experience because even the wife never seen her husband cry before. I could just tell that she's never seen him ever cry like this before. And this is really interesting about the work that I do, because doing this work, it's not an official AT&T phone call. It's kind of like a muffled phone call. Sometimes we don't hear as clearly as Spirit is trying to push through. He came up and he goes, okay. He goes, yes, I was in Vietnam with him. And yes, we all joked with him that because he got shot and he got his left testicle shot off. But he goes, you told me that he died in Vietnam. He didn't die in Vietnam. He died 7 years later when he came back to California in a car accident. And so that's where it kind of gets a little bit of a fine line there. Yes, I picked up the left testicle. Yes, I got Vietnam and I got him there. Perfect. I actually thought that the man died there.
Right.
But the client said, no, he didn't die there. He died here in California 7 years later. So that's an interesting one. But, I do a lot of work for celebrities. They come in often. Honestly, Brandy, more than half the time I don't even recognize them.
Yeah.
The receptionist at the front that takes care of the office, she'll tell me. But half the time I just don't recognize them. And the reason why is because honestly, I just don't care.
Yeah.
I treat everybody the same, whether a person can barely afford to see me or whether a person can, buy me over a million times. I treat everybody the same. So, as I always like to say, death does not discriminate. It affects us all.
Do you know that that's part of a line from Hamilton, and it's so hard to not finish that sentence? Have you seen Hamilton, Tim?
No. What's the sentence?
Oh, it's death does not discriminate between the sinners and the saints. It takes and it takes and it takes, and we keep living anyway. So,
oh, wow. I never heard that before.
It's wonderful. I highly recommend Hamilton. I think you would find it really, really interesting.
Wonderful. Okay. I got to check that out.
I didn't mean to turn, many things, fine. I didn't mean to turn this into Hamilton.
That's okay.
But I have sent a bunch of people to you, to your way over the years, and everyone I've told about you tells me they had a session with you and that it was life-changing. So needless to say, I can't recommend you enough. What you offer cannot be gotten any other way, really, I think. And it's such a unique healing experience, and it's so eye-opening. And I know so many people out there have lost loved ones, even pets. We've had pets come through, which is, like Tim's explained, is amazing. And I think there's so many people who could benefit from just being in their loved one's energy for an hour and receiving loving messages, and just the validation, too, that they're not completely alone. So one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning was for my wedding. I hadn't really thought about this until I sat with you, but at my wedding, I did place like name cards, and I made name cards for my family members who had passed over. And so I had them there, and I would not have thought to do that. And I had a plant for each of them. So it was like their presence was honored. And before seeing you, I would have never thought to do something like that. And it felt really meaningful because it's like I felt like they're not gone completely. So anyway, I can't say enough amazing things about you. So Tim, where can people find you online and possibly book a session with you, whether remote or in person when things are back to normal?
You can just go to timbraunmedium.com, and that's all my handles for Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, Tim Braun Medium. And you can go online to find out what I have availability. Usually I'm booked up about 4 or 5 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
But if you really need to get in an emergency, just tell Ashley to put you on top of the wait list.
Okay.
But yeah, my office is in Fashion Island in Newport Beach, and I work Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Wednesdays are my only days off, and
Nice.
Saturdays and Sundays. That's my downtime.
Okay. And you also do stuff over phone or Zoom, something like that? Okay.
So phone and in person, there's no difference as long as by phone you're not having anybody that's going to be ringing the doorbell or dogs barking or, music playing in the background. If you can have complete silence, the sitting by phone is just as valid as in person.
Okay.
And I tell people by phone, if you don't want to come to the office because of the pandemic or just because you're out of state or out of the country, 10, 15 minutes before the sitting, just meditate for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Just get centered, get calm.
Okay.
I mean, you're going to have to do that in my office anyways, because
Right.
we want everybody to get there 15 minutes ahead of time so you can relax.
Yes.
So
okay.
It's just the same, and there's no difference in the communication.
Okay. And what would you say to people who are skeptical? Like, is there some sort of thing you have for them?
Yeah, I'm a skeptical person myself, as I mentioned. If you come to me or you go to any other medium, always remember the less the medium knows, the better. So don't give any information. The less the medium knows, the better. There was a sitting even on Monday at my office, and the woman brought some pictures in. You can tell they're in a grocery bag, and at the very end of the sitting, she goes, "I want to show you, my fiance and also my grandfather who came through." And I said, "No, I'd rather not see the pictures." And she says, "No, you're spot on. You're right on about their look and the mustache and all of that." And she goes, "Why don't you want to see them?" And I said, "Well, if you have another sitting with me in the future, what if your grandfather had a big old black mole on his cheek? And the next time you come in, I see that, then that comes in from validation. It doesn't come through that Tim saw the picture and he might have remembered my grandfather having a big black mole."
Right, smart.
So I always like to say the less that I know, the better. Always remember that this is a sitting. We sit with spirit and we see who comes in and who doesn't come through. There's never any guarantees who's going to come in and who doesn't. In my work, I have to say it's a 97% success rate, 95 to 97% success rate on the first sitting of the people that need to come in or were invited to come in. But it's very individualistic from sitting to sitting.
Okay. Tim, thank you so much for saying yes to this. It was such a treat for me, and I hope I didn't wear you out with all my questions.
As a suggestion, if you have some of your viewers, having some questions that weren't asked today, and they want to ask some more specific questions or maybe some lessons on how to do meditation or anything like that, if you want to take a list of their questions and then have me come back on, I'd be more than willing to do that for you.
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet. Okay, well, that's happening. So I'll have to tell my people to come up with their questions. I'm sure people have a million.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being a fond part of me and my husband's lives. And hopefully we will see you soon in person. Just this morning, my husband was like, "I need to book a session with Tim." And I'm like, so funny. I'm talking to him later. So we will be seeing you soon.
Okay. All right, Brandy. Thanks so much. And we'll talk later.
Have I mentioned that you should go see Tim? I still have about 1,000 questions for him, but this interview at least tended to some of them. I wanted to make sure that I commented about him saying, as long as you give 110% to your family and job, that's what's important. I just want to say that as moms, just know that we are operating without a safety net, nor a village, and are also conditioned to do way more than our fair share. So I know most of you already give 300%. So let's just interpret Tim's message as pull back from 300% down to 110%, moms, okay? I know what he's saying with doing your best at whatever you do, no matter your role, and I agree. But I just worry about a group of overwhelmed moms hearing that they need to give more. So don't give more because you're already giving more. Give less. 110% is less than you're likely giving right now. A quick plug for my book, which as an indie author, I gotta do. If you're enjoying this podcast, you will likely enjoy my book, Adult Conversation, a Novel. It's a darkly comedic story about a frazzled modern mother and her therapist who go on a Thelma and Louise-style road trip to Vegas, looking for pieces of themselves that motherhood and marriage swallowed up, while they are also tested and tempted to make life-altering choices. Yes, there are strippers, there's weed, it's Vegas. One reviewer said, absolutely felt seen and understood by the author because she put in all the real parts of motherhood. Great insights and a must-read for any woman contemplating having children or any mom in the weeds with them. And there's also an audiobook version of my book, which I narrated, in case you can't fathom being able to sit still and read a book during summer with kids. As always, thanks for listening.
Here I am back at the goddamn zoo.